Hello, in this section we're going to discuss how to design a roof plan and a wall section. Let's start by importing all the blocks from our updated blocks file. This is how it's going to look like. Just go ahead and copy the entire thing. As well as you probably can see here on the right side from the right elevation, there is a small section and a depth points layer. So go ahead and copy this, Control C, and bring it into your project. Try to place this section area the same distance as the left elevation and right elevation are from each other. And try to align it horizontally so it's going to align with everything else. Once you have done this, let's go ahead and create another viewport titled Roof Plan. Whenever you put in all the blocks from the blocks area into your project, you probably have noticed that there are a few layers that have been created at the same time. This way you don't have to worry about creating them manually. So let's go ahead and create another layout, A5-roof plan. I have personally copied my second floor plan and changed it to A5 roof plan. Now I would like to change and turn off all the layers that are going to be represented in this viewport. I double click inside and go to the right side and select the layers that are currently showing up in this area. So once you turn off all other layers, in this case I turned off the second floor layers, this is what you should see: an empty screen, an empty viewport with the squares as if they're showing up in the depth points layer. Now let's go ahead and model the roof plan. In the model space, and go ahead and turn on only your second walls so that we can see them clearly. And on top of them, we're going to, or instead of on top of them, let's outline and select the exterior walls only in this project. I'm not going to select all the exterior walls because I know I'm going to connect this wall and this wall together, so there's no need for me to select these ones since they are at the same angle. I'll select these, and this one is already selected. So essentially what we're going to do, we're going to copy the second walls onto the roof walls layer. And I'm also going to copy this. I'll copy them to the side. I think the best number would be about 100 feet off to the side. Now I will go ahead and enclose all the layers by pressing F for fillet. I'll spacebar the command so it's going to repeat the same thing. In this case, I want to remove that line and connect these lines. And I want to connect this line and this line. Since this is an outside wall of our first floor plan, I'm going to go ahead and change it right now to the roof wall layer. And I want to make sure I want to keep the color by layer, and I want to keep the line type to hidden 2. And now I'm actually going to MA for match properties, select one of these walls and select the rest because these are going to be the same walls. Now since this only represents the outside portion of the wall, I also want to offset this by 4 inches to show the interior portion of the first walls. Just like this. And I want to trim the corners. I pressed F, you can press TR and trim the corners. Now, if I want to zoom in on any one of these layers, most likely I'm not going to see that it's drawn in hidden 2 line type. However, once we transfer it into our floor plan area right here, we're going to be able to see them. So let's go ahead and do this right now. Select the entire thing, M for move, and we can move it 100 feet exactly. Now we're going to overlay this on top of our second walls, and we can see the overlay is perfect. Let's turn off our second walls completely. And now we're able to see in our newly created roof plan viewport that our dashed lines will represent our second floor exterior walls and first floor exterior walls. We're not interested in the second floor in interior walls. only concerned with the exterior or the load-bearing ones. And as you can remember from our elevations, we've designed our house to have a 6-inch overhang. This is distance from this side to this side. So what we're going to do now essentially is we're going to offset the overall exterior portion of our wall by 6 inches from all sides. Trim it. Select them all and change the layer, as well as the line type, since we have adjusted that manually. In this case, our layer will be roof. The red color is thicker than the sign color according to our plotting style table. And let's change the line type by layer. So right now we have pretty much drawn out the outline of our roof. In this case, we're going to extend this line here because we have an upper portion of the roof and a lower portion of the roof. A quick guide is located for you in the roof plan area. This is the roof outline. These are the walls below and a few annotations that we're going to be in need of. Next thing we need to notice is that according to our side elevation, our roof ridge is right in the middle from this side of the wall to this side of the wall. Because of this, we're going to go ahead and change our layer to the roof layer and draw a line from from the middle of the left side to the middle of the right side. When you try to draw from the middle, as long as you have the right nodes selected over here, you should be able to see a blue or a green triangle, and that will indicate a midpoint. So I've drawn a midpoint from left and to the right side. We don't have a midpoint here since this is a shed type roof. Once we have done this, let's go ahead and draw the rest of the items that we need. For instance, the roof ridge. Similar to how we have drawn it in the elevation, we're going to draw this here. You don't have to be exactly precise, but you can offset it about a foot from the right side, span it to about a foot to the right side, and TR for trim the middle line. And you can put this roof ridge annotation in the middle. Once you have done this, let's go ahead and indicate the slope of our roof. Let's go ahead and copy the up and down one. Move it here. This is going to be our slope on this side, slope on this side, and we need to indicate the location of the slope, which even though it's obvious for this portion. Now, as you can see, someone may get confused if they're just looking at the roof plan. How is this going on? Is this a roof? And which one of these is a roof that is higher? For that reason, we're going to add these two annotations for lower and upper level roofs. Obviously, the lower one will be our garage roof, and the upper one will be our house roof, and that should be sufficient. Once we have done this, there is only very little things left, and it is to add dimensions and to add an overhang, which pretty much just summarizes an annotation for where our overhang is. So there is a specific layer, roof dimensions, that is chosen for this purpose. And let's go ahead and create the dimensions based on the PDF that you have seen. Once you finish, you should have something like this. Again, we're showing the overhangs, we're showing the overall exterior dimensions. In this case, we have a ridge on this side, so we're showing the split dimension on one side and the overall on the other, and pretty much showing the corners of our roof. That makes it easier for contractors to price and understand the area of the roof that they're working with. And that will sum up our roof plan. Let's go ahead and move on to our wall section. Let's start by creating a viewport for our wall section. Let's make a copy of our front and rear elevations sheet. Create a copy and rename it appropriately. Let's name it A6 wall section. And let's change the scale of one of the viewports. Since we're not going to need both of them, we can remove one of them and relocate another somewhere closer to the middle and resize it, because it's going to be a detail that has a larger scale than the one we're showing right now. Right now, the scale of our viewport is 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. Let's unlock, unless you have it unlocked already, the display, so we can change the scale. And let's manually click on the viewport boundary and change it to 3/8 of an inch. As you can see, this is pretty much going to be the scale of our wall section. Let's go ahead now and locate this view onto the view over here. Once you have located the viewport and put it onto the section depth points rectangle, this is what you're going to see for now. Now let's go ahead and make a copy of our front elevation for reference. Copy the entire thing. Copy, make sure it stays on the same horizontal plane, and copy it to the right. We're going to group it, select the entire thing, plus GR and spacebar. Or if spacebar doesn't work, press GR and press and group. This is going to be removed later, so do not put it anywhere else. Once you have done this, let's go ahead and draw a depth points line from our top of foundation wall right here, all across the section area. And from here onwards, we can go ahead and start designing our wall section. The first thing we're going to do is that we're going to draw a foundation wall. We're going to change our layer to sections. We're going to draw a line that is 8 inches long in horizontal area. I'm going to select to have the right degree angle, press 8 inches, and I will go down 8 feet, since we're going to have an 8-foot foundation wall, and as well 8 inches at the bottom and 8 feet up. Now I'm going to select this entire thing and change it to a different color. I'm going to select, I will go ahead and change the color to the white color, so that it's going to appear thicker. Now, what is important is for us to draw our footing, which is 4 inches wider on each side of the foundation wall, and it is only 8 inches deep. So it's going to show like this. So this is our footing, this is our foundation wall, and again, all of these references you can go and look up from our wall section PDF, both in color and in black and white version. So you don't necessarily have to watch the rest of the videos, as long as you can follow the PDF correctly and have all the things in the right colors and in the right layers. But let's go ahead and now draw our concrete slab. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to start from this corner and extend it somewhere here, about 3 feet, I would say. 3 feet up and 4 inches, 3 feet to the left, 4 inches up, because it's going to be a 4-inch concrete slab, and the rest of the way to the foundation wall. Change this to the white color, and now we've drawn our footing, slab, and foundation wall. The one thing to note is we're going to have several what is referred to as cut-throughs through our wall section, and the way those are represented typically, I'll actually encourage most of you to copy this entire thing for section views over into this area for easier reference, so you don't have to worry about going back and forth on your screen. Now over here you can see there are section cuts. They're necessary when you do not want to represent the entire wall because of the lack of space you might have or other issues. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it somewhere here, and since I'm cutting it, technically the space in between these lines is void. So I press TR for trim and I cut the void. Now again, I only cut the space, but now what I can do, since that void technically has no dimension specified, what I can do is I can select the bottom portion, press S for stretch, and move it up until I feel comfortable to show portion of the wall. Now, what will indicate to someone that this is still an 8-foot wall? Well, we can do this simply by using a section dimension. I changed it to section dimension layer, press for a specific dimension type, go from the corner of your footing to the top portion of your foundation wall. And as you can see right now, it obviously shows 5 feet because this is the exact dimension. But one thing I can do, I can manually change that if I double click on it, and I can change it to whatever I want. And I personally want it to be 8 feet. So by manually changing the dimension scale, essentially what we're doing is we're showing that this portion from here to here with this section through is still going to be 8 feet. Now let's go ahead and see how this is going to appear in the wall section. A viewport. Let's go to our wall section viewport. And that actually appears to be very small. I guess that is still not enough for us to scale the wall section. So let's go ahead and change the wall section to be not 3/8 of an inch, but 3/4 of an inch. And that should be better because we still have a few portions that we're going to draw up, and we would like for this to be pretty large. The one thing we can change is the scale of the dimension. So if you click on this dimension, and provided you've drawn it correctly with using our layer, let's change the dimension scale overall to not 96, but let's say 48. And 48 appears to be just fine. So let's go ahead and keep this dimension type exactly the same throughout our design of the wall section. Now that we've drawn the foundation wall, we need to make sure we're going to put our sill plate on the foundation wall. And you can find a sill plate essentially is a 2x4, a 2x6 in a horizontal way. For the purpose of this specific wall section, we're going to use a 2x6. Let's go ahead and copy it. If it is not grouped together for you, like it is for me right now, go ahead and select the entire thing, press GR, and click on group. This way, once you select it, it's going to move all the items at the same time. So let's put the bottom right corner right on the edge of our foundation wall. And once we've done this, offset it to the left by 1/2 an inch. And the reason for it is because we're going to essentially have enough space for our wall sheathing on the outside to be in the same vertical line as our foundation wall. So now that we've drawn a 2x6, let's go ahead and get a 2x10, which is going to be our rim joist, or it's also referred to as band board, and we're going to draw the vertical one. As you can see in these blocks already, or not blocks, these modules, you can already see the numbers 2x10, 2x6 to make it easier for you to choose the right one. And let's place the bottom right corner to the top right corner. So it's going to sit right on top of our top plate. From here, we're going to go back to our sections, and provided these are drawn in the right section, which should be under the sections, and this should be under the sections layer as well. So let's go ahead and draw a line from the top left corner of our 2x6 all the way to the left about 4 or 5 feet, it doesn't matter. Let's copy the same line and draw and put it over here at the top of our 2x10. Essentially what we're showing is we have joists to go in a horizontal direction and butting into this 2x10. Now let's change the color of those to a cyan because we don't want them to stand out too much. Once we have designed the joists, we need to design the subfloor that is going to be used for this building. And subfloor is going to be exactly 3/4 of an inch thick. So we're going to go ahead and create a 3/4 of an inch copy of this line and move it all the way to the right side up until it meets with the corner. go down and change this entire portion to, then we select these lines and change them to the color yellow, since this is going to represent our subfloor. On top of the subfloor, we're going to put a 2x4 or a bottom plate for our interior walls, interior and exterior walls. We're going to take a 2x4, copy it, and put it right here at the corner. Once we have done this, let's go ahead and extend lines that will represent walls. We're going to draw vertical lines from one side and the other. We're obviously going to change the color of the lines to be cyan. And on the left side, we're going to actually offset this time to make it easier, 1/2 inch from this portion. And it's going to come down to the bottom of this line. And this line right here, we're going to change to yellow color. And essentially what it shows is this gap right here, which is 1/2 inch thick. This represents drywall. Drywall goes on the interior side of the building in residential construction. However, in commercial, there are some variations of drywall that also go on the exterior side. In our case, we are not going to worry about this here. Now, since we have drawn the subfloor, we've drawn the interior drywall, let's go ahead and draw the sheathing on the outside portion of our building. But the way we're going to do this is we're actually going to go from the corner of our foundation wall. Let's go up about 1/2 inch and turn to the left. So what this is going to be, we're going to remove this bottom line and change this line to be white. What this is going to represent is a portion of our sheathing, but it will be offset from the bottom of the foundation by 1/2 inch, because we do not want the sheathing to be touching the foundation, since there is a potential for the sheathing to get the moisture from the foundation wall once it gets wet. So let's go ahead and draw a line all the way straight up to roughly this point. And let's change it up, press MA for match properties for this line as well. So what this does is we're drawing the exterior sheathing as well. Now the process is pretty much very similar for the rest of the building, since we're going to pretty much use the same platform construction. This is called platform construction assembly, where we put in the sill plate, rim joist, subfloor, bottom plate, and a wall going up. Now I do not want to really draw the entire thing all the way up, so I want to cut it somewhere here and extend the rest of these lines. Probably move this a little bit to the right to make it centered. EX for extend, and select the lines that I want to extend to. Now on the other side, we're going to draw a portion of a window, which we already have a block, or not a block, a series of lines. Since this is going to be we already drawn the bottom portion of the wall, we're going to use the upper half of the window. We're going to copy this entire thing over here. And what's important is that we're going to draw an XL line for better reference. So the way it's going to be is we're going to put this inside of our cavity, and it's going to touch the cutting area as well. So this point right here is perfect. We, however, do not want it to be intersecting our cut section area, so we'll go ahead and trim it here and here to make it neater, and extend it here. This is what we need to be looking at. And this line at this point becomes irrelevant, so we remove it. If you can see a discontinuity in our lines, let's go ahead and close them. So this represents an upper half of our window. And the way our windows are going to be drawn, and we might move some things here and there, because we need to keep in mind the relationship of our floors to one another. So for instance, the first floor starts at 11 inches and a half from the top of the foundation wall, which we have already drawn. However, the second floor starts where the first floor finishes is 9 feet 1 inches and 1/8 of an inch. So the way we're going to go about doing this is we're going to start dimensioning things. So let's go ahead and start dimensioning several things. I'll click on the dimension line we've already drawn. I personally use DCO command for dimension extension. I click on dimension line I want to extend, and this is the subfloor level that I want to pick. So this 11.5 inches is the same thing as this 11.5 inches. Now I need to have another offset at 9 feet 1 inch and 1/8 of an inch. The way I like going about this is I copy this line at a certain location, which is not going to be exactly 9 feet because, again, we're having this cut section. I want to copy it somewhere here for now. It's not quite relevant just yet where we're going to put it. Well, let's go back to this window, and then we're going to find out exactly where we need to have this line at. And this line is going to be cyan, since it's going to represent the bottom portion of our joist. In order for us to draw at the exact location of this, we need to first draw how the structure of our window is going to work out. Let's go ahead and pick a 2x10 again, since we need to design a header. A header is what transfers the load from above, not exactly onto the window, but on the sides from the window. We're going to draw a 2x10 on both sides, both corners of the window, and leave this gap for now. And this gap is 1/2 inch. And this 1/2 inch gap we're going to fill up with a piece of plywood, which is exactly 1.5 inches. As you can see, there's an outline, but it is in depth points because this is a hatch in the middle. I'm going to keep the depth points since it's not going to be printed, and copy the entire thing into that cavity. Let's see if it's going to fit in nicely or if we have to move it. I put it in the cavity and it fits in not quite nicely, but we can move it all the way to the top right here, as well as extend our hatch. So this represents what is referred to as a sandwich header. One 2x10 on one side and on the other side, and a 1/2 inch plywood in the middle. The next thing would be for us to draw a drywall on both sides of the window. Since we are technically going to see a piece of drywall sticking out from one side of the window, unless we're going to put some sort of trim in the middle. So I'm going to extend this line or copy the line from above. I cannot extend it because there is the section through that should be void. So I extended this now here, and I still haven't figured out exactly where this cyan line has to be. And in order for me to do that, essentially what I want to do is I want to group this, if it's not already, and copy this in place on top of the header, because everywhere where there is a transition between the floors, we need to put a double plate. A plate is referred to as a 2x4. So 2x4s will be our double plate, and our bottom of our joist above supporting the second floor will be sitting on top of our second top plate right here. So this line represents the bottom of our joist, similar to this condition. And what we can do is literally copy this entire portion right here. Let's not touch the sheeting on the right side, and probably let's copy this as well, and this. Essentially the wall above, the drywall, the subfloor, the rim joist, the sill plate, and the bottom portion of the joist. Well, actually, let's leave the sill plate alone right now, and let's just copy the joist alone. And we are in this line of the joist, which is the bottom portion, we're going to align to this portion of our wall. And essentially this is how we're recreating the second floor. There's no specific thing we need to do other than that. Let's go ahead and copy our sheeting to this portion, trim it as necessary. And on this side, we're actually not going to be able to see the sheeting, at least it's not visually well represented, and we're going to stop the sheeting at this location. So what I did, I drew a horizontal line from the top right corner of the window to the sheeting, and we're going to extend it essentially all the way through to the roof. Right here, we're going to stop for now. This portion, EX for extend, the drywall is going to extend all the way up. And then we're going to actually draw the ceiling, which will also be made out of drywall. So we're going to offset by 1/2 inch this bottom portion of the joist, because drywall is attached to the joist, and we will extend it to here. And this way we're going to draw our ceiling. And again, you can always reference the PDF for more clarity in some of these details. Once we have drawn this portion of our wall, we're actually going to replicate this portion of the wall because they will be identical. So what we need to do is copy this entire header as well as the double plate and these section through lines. I'll copy them from the top of my wall below to the top of my wall below or above. Let's go ahead and actually F4 fillet and trim the portion in between. And this is what we get. This is going to be the top portion of our second floor. We've drawn our foundation, first floor, second floor. Let's finish it up just slightly. There's a few more things that we need to draw in order to make sure we have everything we need. We're drawing the sheeting on the right side. And for now, we're going to keep this line here, but we will trim it at the end. Another thing that we're going to draw in this point in time will be our interior and exterior trim. Typically, it can be composed out of 2x4 material or 1x4 material, such as this and this. However, in this case, we're going to use a composite material, which can be a mix of wood and other materials, or can be a completely non-wood material, such as plastic. So let's use a 1x4 and 1x6 and 1x8, and we're going to actually use the vertical profiles, copying them to our building. Let's use the 1x4, use this at this location, right exactly where our header is at, but on the side of drywall, because the drywall is going to go first and then our trim is going to go next. And right here we need to show a break in our drywall, because technically there will be a line right here that is going to separate the drywall that we see further from the drywall that we can see closer. So we've drawn our interior trim for the window. Let's do the same thing. Let's actually copy this line here as well, and do the same thing for the upper portion in this case. Right here, let's use a 1x6 on our bottom window at this location, and a 1x8 at our top window at the same spot. Now that we've drawn the trim, there are only a few more things left in order for us to finalize how our wall section is actually going to look like. The next thing is going to help us determine the location of our trusses. Make sure you're in the sections layer, press L, draw a line from the top portion of your very highest top plate to the left, somewhere around 3 feet for now. Make sure it's horizontal. Offset this line by 3.5 inches, which is essentially a 2x4 that is rotated. And let's pick somewhere, let's say from here, and draw another line that is 1 foot long. Once you've drawn this line, you immediately will be asked whether you want to draw another line, and you do. And let's draw another one at 6 inches vertically. Let's pick the longest lines, not the ones you've just drawn, longest ones, and make them into the cyan color. So this way we can see this is our 1 foot long line and a 6 inch line. Let's connect them together, just like that. And what this is going to represent is our 6 to 12 slope. So we're going 12 inches to the left or to the right and 6 inches up. This is 6 to 12 slope. Let's again offset this line by 3.5 inches towards this side and match the properties of the lines below to the lines above. So we're halfway done with our truss. There's are a few other things we need to consider when drawing a roof truss. Another thing is the offset from our building. In other words, is the overhang. So let's go ahead and offset again, but this time 6 inches for our overhang from the right side of our wall or our sheathing, right exactly to this location. And in order for us to determine exactly the point where it should meet at in our building, let's first draw this portion of our design in order for us to better understand where our engineered truss has to be located at. In order for us to do so, let's bring one of the components into our design, and that would be our soffit, our gutter board, flashing, and drip edge. Let's copy them all together. To somewhere here. Once we're here, you can see this soffit has a clip, which is shown in a almost completed square, and this depth points line. That's since again depth points are not visible on our prints, we can go ahead and copy the entire assembly, and that depth points represents our sheeting. So let's go ahead and copy this entire thing to the left, somewhere a little bit below, a little bit above our 1x8 composite trim. So that it's going to look something like this. Again, the depth points layer goes away, or we can keep it, doesn't matter. But the most important thing is that this clip does not quite touch the wall, and this soffit is going to stay in this location. Once we have drawn this soffit, what we need to do is to draw a gutter board. And our gutter board is going to be made out of a 2x6, which is pretty typical. Let's get our 2x6 in a vertical profile, copy it, move it to this location. Make sure to group it so that it will be easier for you to work with it. Once you group it, bottom right corner to the corner of our soffit. Let's get our gutter out of the way. Now let's do the flashing. Flashing helps us prevent moisture damage or moisture contact with our design. So let's move it first to the corner, then move this to the bottom so the bottom touches it, and now let's attach the gutter to this location. And gutter will be slightly offset from the flashing so those lines do not overlap. As we have done this, we can see, you can either dimension it or you can see it just like this, that from this portion of the building to this, it shows 1 foot, but we need 6 inches, and which is what this line is for. So what we can do, we can essentially move this entire portion to the left side, or what I like doing it is selecting this entire area and moving it from the right side of our 2x6 to this location. You can see our 2x6 aligns with the line we have set 6 inches away from our sheeting. We can actually now remove this line, we don't need it, and this is what we end up for our top portion. Now we need to connect our plate with our pre-engineered roof joist. And that is probably more complicated once you draw it once, but once you understand the process, it's actually easier to build it than to design it. We're going to refer to this component right here below in our sections that we copied from above. And this is already at the angle that we want it to be, but it has a different extension. So how do we verify the slope? Let's pick any line, any point on this roof joist. Let's draw a line 1 foot to the left, and let's draw a line up until it touches the same roof joist or pre-engineered truss. If this is 6 inches, while this is 1 foot exactly, then this is a 6 to 12 slope, which is what we need. In this area, we can see we have essentially an outline of our truss, which we're not going to use, but this truss we cannot use because this one has an extension that is longer and it has other things that are going on. So what we're going to do is only use the upper portion where you can see those cyan lines going through the build, going almost through each other, as well as this polyline below. And let's copy them from this corner exactly to this corner. Now that we have done this, let's take those two lines that we have drawn earlier and move them, and let's make sure that this portion goes exactly where this point is at. So what we're doing essentially, we're drawing exactly where our truss is going to stop and where our gutter board is going to end. Now that we have drawn our truss, typically trusses are not cut at this angle. So what we are going to do now is draw a line perpendicularly or straight up, trim it here, and make sure that we change the color of that line. Extend this, and let's trim it in the following manner. Please make sure you pay attention. Let's fillet F for this line and this line. Okay. And let's again offset by 3.5 inches this line here. And once we've done it, let's draw a line from the top right corner of our plate through this line, and let's fill these two lines. And let's change this right here. Now let's F for fillet this line and this line, and this represents our overhang from our engineered truss. Now our engineered truss is going to continue here, and let's actually do that. Remove this upper portion since we use it only for reference, and draw a line somewhere, I would say somewhere here. There's not an exact distance. I would say about 2'8" roughly. Let's extend, actually no, let's move this line closer to the shingles to make it easier for ourselves, not having to recreate them. As you can see, it touches the shingles exactly. And let's trim the lines that are on the left side from that line. And let's extend these lines right here. And this, what this shows is that we have our truss that made out of 2x4s. And let's trim down our subfloor, which is going to stop exactly at the portion of our 2x4 top plate. Let's extend it to the side. And let's make sure to change the colors. And once you have done this, this is how it's supposed to look like. Now, a few other things that we need to finish up with, and let's try not to make it into a very long video. Let's grab this, move it exactly where I'm showing, because it's supposed to be not quite touching the subfloor, but it's supposed to drip down into the gutter. So as you can see, it's already at an angle, and it's going to be dripping into our gutter. Once we have done this, we've drawn our interior, exterior trims, we've drawn our drywall. Let's make sure we draw a drywall on this side, on the ceiling, offset, 1/2 inch. Let's trim it, or extend it this way. Let's match the properties of the yellow line next to it. As you can see, we've drawn this portion, we've cut through 2 windows already. Things like hatches, you can see from the PDF that you can insert hatches that are located over here, but you need to make sure that they are turned on. They're located over here for the earth, the gravel, the concrete, and plywood. And the locations where you want to put them are, again, plywood is already here. You don't have to worry about it. There will be a place where you will put your earth, which is going to be, according to the PDF, in this portion, because this is where you're going to create your slope line, which will be 8 inches offset from the top of your foundation wall. Again, the slope is not quite relevant as long as there is a slope. Just don't make it like this. It should be about anywhere from 1 to 10 degrees, as you can see on my screen. The hatches you can draw for the top and the bottom portion of the foundation. The rebars are those red circles with cyan hatches. Those you place according to the PDF. Again, doesn't have to be an exact location. Drain tile is located here. This is the line you have to use for the grade. It's supposed to say grade line. And the anchor bolt. Anchor bolt, please make sure you first group it, make it easier for yourself, and put it exactly where it belongs, which is right here, so that the bolt touches the top of the 2x6 sill plate, but it doesn't quite touch the 2x10 rim joist. You can also use the hatches for the concrete slab. A drain tile is over here, the gravel is here. You can outline the area where you want something to be at, like this, just by drawing multiple lines, and then hatching it like this, and then changing the hatch to a specific one that you're using. I'm personally not going to do this right now, because that should be self-explanatory. Other things such as dimensions, you already have a sample of the dimension. You already have the dimensions according to the PDF. Another thing that will be interesting for you to see is the insulation. The way we draw insulation is actually, you have 2 types of insulation already. Let's copy them into our project for our wall. There's an insulation that goes into the actual cavity of the wall, which, as you can see, it's slightly oversized. So the way you can change it so that these loops are not going to be beyond these cyan lines is you go to your properties and you change the line type scale. Let's say I want to make sure it's going to be smaller. I change it to 4, and 4 fits perfectly. You can see my loops are within that cavity, and I can extend it all the way to this location, since it's not very straight, right here. And this shows that I have insulation in my cavity. Since we're cutting through our window, there is no insulation we need to draw there, but there are a few places such as this one where we need to draw the insulation. For instance, here I need to rotate it 90 degrees and change it to a larger scale and just make it smaller, because this is going to use a different type of insulation. And people who have been in the field actually building them, they understand the difference between the larger insulation loops versus the smaller ones. Similar to this, there is insulation here, and insulation here, and insulation going in this direction. Another one of the last things that you need to draw for your roof would be the baffles, and it's actually a block that you can copy from here, the vent baffle, or it's a polyline, I believe. You can copy it and locate it exactly where the PDF is showing. I believe once you have done all of this and you've added your section cuts and trimmed all the lines appropriately and dimensioned everything, you should have a very nice and clean section. Finally, the last thing I forgot to mention was that you need to draw your vinyl siding. And you can see you already have that component set and ready. There's an interior portion, exterior portion, and this depth points layer line indicates your sheathing. So let's copy this. Let's actually copy them both and move them towards our building. And we're going to see this over here. Let's move the depth points on top of our line right here, and we do not want to have this gap of nothingness. So let's move this vinyl siding all the way up to this cut line, and let's make sure that this actually, well, there's a few ways of working around this. I want this vinyl siding to extend down about, according to the PDF, about 1.5 inches down. So the way I do this, first of all, I align it to the foundation wall, or roughly, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and then move it down 1.5 inches. However, at the top, I'm still left with a gap. So in one way of fixing it is I can actually copy this entire thing up, and now I have one line overlapping the other. It's not going to affect our plotting since the line cannot get thicker. And I'm going to simply trim this portion and this portion. So this way it looks like a continuous vinyl siding, but from the location that I need. The same thing we can apply to this location. But here, our vinyl siding is going to stop here and start right here, according to the PDF. Once you have drawn the elevations, once you've drawn the section cuts and added dimensions, the last thing that is left for you to add the annotations, which have already been done for you in the chronological order from the roof, soffit, wall, floor, sill, foundation wall, and floor slab. You can copy those and put them exactly where they belong. So for instance, according to the PDF, my floor slab, this line more or less should align, well, or you can eyeball it to align with the floor slab line here. For instance, your sill has to align where your sill is at, and try to make sure that it aligns also regarding this line right here, so that this is more or less in the same plane. So my sill plate line is here. I can move it actually slightly higher right here, and it looks perfect. And so now that the people who are looking, okay, I'm looking at the sill plate, what does it tell me? It's made out of 2x4 pressure treated wood, sill plate with sill sealer, metal mud sill anchor at 36 inches on center, embedded 7 inches deep. Something of that nature. Same goes for the rest of the annotations. Please follow the PDF. Once you have done all the work, you should have something of this nature appear on your screen. And as you can see, there are all the hatches that I was looking for, different types of insulation in the proper locations, the annotations at the right place, and everything else you need. Now we can remove this line that goes through the building. Not sure what that was. And let's remove these references that we were using, since we're now no longer in need of them. And if we look at our wall section, let's slightly move it. Let's actually make sure we trim it correctly. And this is, and unfortunately, sometimes what happens is our wall section changes the scale of our insulation lines. So I'm not going to blame you for this. This is not a problem. This is sometimes what happens. And insulation, in my personal experience, has been a headache of its own. In order for it to change in the viewport, we click on that insulation and change the scale. Now, once we change the scale here, it changes it in the model space and it will not look as good as it should. So for now, I'm going to change it to 0.5 or something else in order for it to align. But you don't have to do this. Whenever I do this, I'll try to make sure it looks good on the PDFs, which it does already since you've already seen them. So I will, whenever I fix this, this is the PDFs that you will be seeing. If for some reason your viewport is not showing certain hatches, that could be because those hatches are in a layer that are not the layer that is visible on your viewport. For instance, a few of my hatches were mistakenly on the wrong layer and they're not showing up in this viewport simply because my 0 layer is turned off in this viewport. I'll go ahead and turn it on and you should see those hatches in place. Let's quickly go over what your final project AutoCAD file has to look like. First of all, please make sure that you have the exact same name, the exact same numbers for all the viewports and layouts. For instance, A1, this is what I need to see. 2 elevations. Let me go ahead and turn on all the layers so that you can see what it should look like. The front elevation, rear elevation A1, A1A side elevations, A2 foundation plan, A3 first floor plan, A4, well, in this case, I was playing with the file a little bit, and this is a hatch, which I can easily turn off for now, but second floor plan, and 5 is the roof plan, and A6 is the wall section. I may have noticed something that may seem like a mistake, however, it's just an omission. For instance, whenever I created A3, I still haven't designed and created layers for the roof, and I'm right now seeing the layers for the roof on my A3 viewport, and I do not want that to happen. So for instance, if you see something that's out of place in your viewports, you probably have that layer not frozen in that viewport simply because that layer wasn't yet or hasn't been created yet. So in order for me to fix this really quickly, I go to the A3 first floor plan viewport, double click inside of it, and go to my other layers that have been created after I've designed the first floor plan, such as the elevations and all the way down to the section. I select them, I press on this freeze icon in the V section, and they're gone. The same process I can repeat for the rest, and I should repeat for the rest of the plans. So this is what I'm essentially expecting from you by the end of the project. Everything should be nice and clean. Make sure you put everything on the squares. I do not want to see exterior dimensions not to be on the squares unless you're dimensioning a wall, such as here, which is still a part of the interior dimensions. Otherwise, everything has to be on the exterior dimensions. Front elevation, very well outlined. Rear, left, and right elevations, just very basic information. Blocks, I would like to see all the blocks that you have copied, and I want to see your section. And I'll personally go over through these layouts. Please also make sure when you go to the layouts, I want to see whenever you right click on your layout, click on plot, I can see that you have a plot style table, arc 271, that has the appropriate line weights, such as you can see my color 1 has line weight of 0.8 and color of printing is black. Same for color 2, 3, and others according to previous week's session. Not last week, but a few weeks prior. So this is important. Make sure you have a title block on each and every of your layouts. These def points lines are not necessary, but I want to see everything to scale. For instance, this is to scale to a specific scale, such as 1/4 of an inch. If you have it at 1/8 of an inch, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but make sure it's to a scale. I do not want to see different 0 point something numbers or something very odd. That is very important. Other than that, you should be good. If I see this and everything's right, you will get 50 points out of 50. I will be picky about making sure that all the lines are on the correct layers. Of course, there will be instances when they're not. It happens to everyone, so I will not be as picky as you may think. However, I want to make sure that your walls are on the same layer and represented in the same way. Same for your doors, your windows, and other things. Hopefully you enjoyed this project. Now you can actually create a portfolio out of this by printing specific PDFs and start creating your portfolio to showcase to future employers. Thanks.